Hello guys and girls, and welcome to this sort of tutorial, sort of how to, but mainly just a video to just show people some of the process. A lot of people commented on the eyes to the pug that I drew, so I thought I'd just show you a little bit of the process. As you can see, I've using the Strathmore grey tone paper, and I've done my usual. I've drawn a base sketch, and then I've dabbed it out with a kneaded eraser, and that's to take away a lot of the lead, a lot of the graphite, the pencil from the paper, so that when I'm using the coloured pencils I don't get the pencil lines showing underneath, or I don't get the graphite mixing with the coloured pencil if I blend. What I'm doing at the moment, I'm just getting in the basic shape of the eye, the lids with the this is a grey ink pen, a graphic ink pen. I think it's a. I can't really see with my crappy eyes with my reading glasses on as I'm looking at the video myself, but it's probably a 0. Between a 0 0.1 and a 0.3 on scale, so it's quite thin. A lot of you are probably wondering, well, how do you use an ink pen with coloured pencils? Isn't that a problem with blending? But not at all. It's not a problem at all, and the reason I'm using this ink pen just to get in this the outlines of the eye is because, sorry, I've just had a message come up on my screen about start recording narration from your microphone. I'm like, what the hell's that? Does that mean this is recording or not? Oh well, I hope so. But yeah, back to the drawing. The reason I'm using this grey ink pen for the outline is because you can really get some defined lines in there. When you're using a pencil to draw your lines, you can use a pencil, and I have done in the past. But I find that sometimes when you've gone in and you start blending the pupil, you sort of lose that line. You lose that outline that you've done. Whereas with this ink pen, if I blend the coloured pencils inside of these lines and accidentally touch the lines with my brush as I'm blending, or if the line crosses over into the blending, then you don't lose this line because it's ink and it's pretty solid. So you have to be really careful what you're doing when you're putting these defining lines in. You have to be careful that you get them right, because you can't rub them out. So yeah, it is a bit of a risk, but you just have to take your time and be patient. Right, in the background of this video I've got some hopefully really low music with rainforest sounds on, thunder and lightning, tropical birds and stuff like that. I thought it'd be nice to have in the background of the video, and also for the parts where I'm not talking anymore, hopefully to just give you something nice to listen to while you're watching the drawing. I suppose it's a bit of an ASMR thing, because I know some people like to relax and watch stuff and have something nice in the background, so I thought I'd do that. You have to sort of bear in mind with me as well on this is that my eyesight's not the best. Now I'm pushing over 50. I've got my reading glasses on at the moment, and the screen in front of me that I'm watching, obviously on my editing suite, is a really small screen, so I can't really see that much of what's going on, so I'm winging it a bit, to be honest. But hopefully you'll get in the general gist of what I'm doing. One other thing I like to do when I'm drawing eyes is, a lot of people have commented on how well I get the reflections or the highlights in the eyes. Well, that's one of two things really. One of the things is, obviously, I use a Uniposca white marker for highlights, which really brings it out. And also on the Strathmore grey tone paper, if I use a white Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil or a white Faber-Castell, it really comes up, the white really shows up on grey paper. That's why I use it. Yeah, and the other thing with the reflections, the reason I think I get them okay-ish, or to come out quite good, is the fact that when I'm looking at my reference picture, and this is a good idea if you don't do this, it's a good idea to do this. When I'm looking at my reference picture, I enlarge it, and I really enlarge it quite a lot, so I can see into the eye and see what's there. because a lot of the times most reflections in eyes are the reflection of the photographer or the camera. But from time to time, depending on what angle the subject is, you get things like, usually it's windows. If somebody's taken a shot indoors of the subject and the sun's shining, then you usually get the reflection of the windows in the subject's eyes. And so that's what I look for. I look what's actually there. And in this pug reflection, it looks like they were outdoors. And you could see a reflection of maybe trees and maybe some kind of frame, like a fence. And there were also what looked like to me like two little golf carts, two little golf buggies, because you could see the two lamps or lights on the front of each one, the headlights. And so, yeah, if you know what is in that reflection, the thing that you're drawing, if you actually know what is in that reflection, then you can. It sort of goes a long way to getting it right, because you know what you're drawing, you know what it is. It's two little golf buggies, or a tree, or a window frame, or the person who's taking the picture, blah blah blah. But knowing what is in that reflection makes it a lot easier to draw it. If you're just guessing at shapes, sometimes it can come out okay. But if you don't really know what it is you're drawing in there and you're guessing at it, it's quite easy to get it wrong. So it's a good idea to really enlarge your photograph. Excuse me, my voice is going. Yeah, it's a really good idea to enlarge it and to have a really good look. Now you can see here that I'm using a dark sepia polychromos coloured pencil, and I'm going in again, not just inside of the eyelids, but actually over the eyelids as well. So as you can see, I've just gone over the grey ink pen with a coloured pencil, and it makes no difference. It doesn't harm it in any way. What the pencil is doing, it helps to define the line even more. So yeah, so I think I'm using a black for the underbelly of the eye there, and then a dark sepia to go in with some lighter highlights. Well, dark sepia is quite a dark pencil actually, but what I mean by light highlight is lighter than the black. What I'll do with this eye as we go on is I'll use a mixture of, excuse me again, of greys, of dark greys, light greys. And what I mean by dark and light is obviously cold and warm. The polychromos pencils have got a good range of cold greys from 1 to 6 different ones. And also the same in the warm greys, they've got a range of 1 to 6. Now your warm grey is usually it's more of a sepia browny colour, a warm grey. It is a grey colour, but it's more of a rusted colour, like a browner colour. You can see some tints of brown in there if you look. And the cold grey is more of your actual standard cold steel grey, or your metal grey. So bear that in mind, especially when you're doing an eye. The cold grey you'll want to use as more of the defining lines, the edge of the pupil, the eyelids and things like that. Whereas the warm grey you'll probably want to go in between the eyelid where the tear duct is and things like that. Maybe around the side of the pupil as well. It all depends on where the light's coming from and how it's reflected. But it's also best when you're doing a drawing like this. Like by the side of me, I will have a few pieces of Strathmore Grey scrap paper. And if I'm not sure about something, I'll try it on the scrap paper first. I'll pause my video, I'll go to the scrap paper and I'll try it out. Think, no, that wouldn't work, or oh yeah, that could work. And then once I'm sure I've got what I want to do in my mind, then I'll go and try it on the paper. You don't have to panic too much with coloured pencils when you're working with coloured pencils. A lot of people say it's the hardest medium to work in. It is a hard medium to work in because it takes so much patience and time, because there's a lot of layering involved. But a lot of people say it's the hardest to work with because you can't make a mistake, but that's a myth. I said earlier that you can't make a mistake with the ink pen. That is true, because you can't erase ink. I suppose you could go over it with a white ink pen and then try and colour over that, but it wouldn't work very well, and you'd probably destroy the paper. But as far as the coloured pencil is concerned, you can erase coloured pencil. It's not the be all and end all. You put it on the paper and that's it. The best thing to use, I find, I've got a Derwent electric, battery operated eraser, and that shifts. Make sure your batteries are always new. Make sure it's got a lot of power in it. Make sure that you always check your tip of the eraser, because when you used it last, if you were using red and then you go into erase some white, you're going to get a lovely red smudge on your drawing. So always make sure it's clean, always make sure it's powered up properly, and it's a good tool to have for removing lines. Like for instance, that line I'm putting there, if I did that totally wrong, then I could go in with the battery operated eraser and remove that. You can also use kneaded erasers and normal erasers, but with that there's a bit more, to and froing with you, pushing the rubber backwards and forwards, and you can create really bad smudges, and you can also tear your paper. With the battery operated eraser, it's moving really fast, it's rotating fast, and you only touch the tip to the paper, and if you just touch the tip to the paper, it'll remove. It doesn't remove it totally, you can still see faint lines underneath, but it's usually okay to go over again, especially if you're blending later. Excuse me. As you can see, I'm sort of getting the darks done here. Usually with coloured pencil, I work from light to dark. So if I'm drawing fur, for instance, and it's a dark brown fur with a few tan bits in, then I'll get my light tan colour underneath, and I'll get a few lighter browns in there and start building it up and then going in with the dark browns. But with this eye, the reason I'm doing the dark parts first is because, again, I wanted to define the eyelids and the pupil. I wanted to get the actual structure of the eye in there. And as I said, with Strathmore grey tone paper, you can work whites in really well. So as long as you leave the spaces and the gaps for your highlights, then you'll be fine. That's how I like to do it anyway. It's not everybody's cup of tea, it's not everybody's preference, but that's the way I like to do it. So yeah, another thing with this eye is that excuse me, when this video finishes, it won't be the completed eye. I'm just showing you the general structure, the highlights, and the eye to an almost finished point. Later on in the drawing, if you go to the video, the actual drawing of my pug, the whole video, you can see that every now and again later on I will be going back in and touching up with the eye. You can see here again I'm using ink. This is a black ink liner. I'm using this to define the very edge of the pupil, because it's a real thin black line, and also going over some of the highlighted lines that I did with the grey ink. I realised that they needed to be darker, so I went in over again with the black. But yeah, as I was saying, I'll go back into the eye later on in the video to do some touch-ups, because as you know, as an artist, when you're drawing, you always notice things that you've missed, or notice something that needs touching up a bit more, or you think, oh, that could do with a bit more of an highlight, that could be a bit darker, I've missed something there. So it's always best to check, and a lot of artists are never satisfied with how something turns out on it, or how something finishes. Sometimes I'm like that, I must admit, but sometimes it's good to take a step back. Like with this eye, I'll get it to almost complete, and then I'll move over and I'll do the other eye to almost complete, and then I'll start working on the nose, and then building up the fur and the shape of the head. And then once I'm way into the drawing, I'll know that the eyes weren't completed, that they weren't totally finished, so I can go back in. And then it's good to go back in then anyway, because you've got the rest of the drawing to look at to compare the eyes to. You can see if you need more highlights to bring those eyes out, or whether you need to tone them down a bit because they're standing out too much. I'm going in with the white Caran d'Ache luminance pencil now. As you can see, I'm drawing the highlights there of the iris. Is that the iris? Oh no, the white of the eye anyway. What I did first is I used a really light cold grey. I think it was a cold grey 1 polychromos, and I put in some of the little shaded grey areas that will be in that white of the eye, because a big mistake that a lot of people make when they're drawing the whites of an eye is they actually draw it white, and the white of an eye isn't white. It's got a lot of greys in it, it's got a lot of warm greys, it's got a lot of cold greys, there's a lot of different tones in there. There's a lot of, there's tiny little subtle colours, like you've got yellows in there in some eyes, especially near the tear duct. You've got a lot of pinks and reds, and a lot of veins from the capillaries and stuff. Yeah, so this is basically how I draw a dog's eye. Ideally, what I'd like to do in the future is I'd like to do a proper how-to and tutorial on this and have it more zoomed in, so it's nearer the screen, so you can actually see what I'm doing a lot more. This, I mean, to me at the moment, this is non-existent because of my crappy eyes. But on the actual video, I think it'll be not too bad. It's quite close. This is the actual same footage, obviously, that I used for the pug video, the complete one. But that was time lapse, so I wanted to do this in real time, just to give people an idea of my process, like I said, and also the fact that, with the complete drawing of this pug, the time-lapse video was something like 5 to 7 minutes, and people can't really appreciate, if they don't draw, how much work goes into it. I mean, this video is 35 minutes long, and I'm just drawing one eye, so that goes to show you, take the other eye, another 35 to 45 minutes, the nose is going to be 45 minutes, and then the fur, the complete fur over the whole body, is like 3 or 4 or 5 hours. So the whole thing altogether, I think this pug, I think it took me 6 or 7 hours. But I don't think people really get to appreciate that with a time lapse. I mean, there is drawings I've done that have been like 10 hours, 15 hours, even 20, because it's speeded up, 64 or 128 times speed. People don't really get to see what you're doing. A 15-hour video is condensed into like 5 minutes, so you don't really get the feeling that the person has worked that hard on it, even though they have. But of course, a lot of you who watch my channel and watch my videos are artists anyway, so you obviously know that. The Winnie the Pooh I did, I'm definitely going to do a tutorial of that as well. I'm probably going to put it up as a kids tutorial, but to be honest, it's a tutorial for everyone, for kids and adults alike, or for people who just want to learn to draw. So hopefully that'll be helpful. I've got a Bart Simpson one coming up as well that I've done for kids, just a really simple drawing. It took me an hour. I thought it'd just be good for people to see how to just get a base drawing down and then some simple colouring in. The one problem, the one worry I've got with this video now, and the one thing that I'm thinking is I just hope that video volume's right on the music. If it's not, hopefully I can change it, because I'd hate to have to go through all this again and narrate through all this again. So yeah, I hope you get the general gist of what I've done with this eye. Going in with the ink pen to define the lines, the edges, the lids, the pupil, the iris, the tear duct. There is a small tear duct on this dog's eye, and then of course what I said about looking at the reference and getting your highlights, putting all that together and trying to make it work. Here I'm going in with a small brush, just a sable brush, and I'm using white spirits, odorless white spirits, just to blend in a few of those greys to make them less defining. because if I'd have just left that coal grey one, the polychromos, as it was, the white would not show up so well. The white wouldn't be so much of a highlight against it. So what I've done, I've sort of dumbed it down, if you like, and sort of brought a bit of the black and the sepia into it. It's still a highlight, but it's less of a highlight, and it sort of gives you that sort of feeling that, you know, the filmy texture that a dog's eye has. They've got that third eyelid or whatever it is that can close over the eye. Sometimes you notice when a dog's asleep that you can still see their eyes open, but it's sort of still covered. That's because that third eyelid slips over. And so with this dog, his or her eyes are obviously open, but that third eye is still slipping in on the inner side of the eye, and that's what that sort of grey bit is. And towards the end of this eye video now, I'm starting to just sort of do some basic lines around the eye, sort of to tell myself where which direction the fur is travelling in, how the lid, the defining line of the lid, how that ends underneath when it turns into the fur. So if you like, you've got the dog's eyelid underneath that's covered in fur, but then as it comes up to the eye, it's just skin, basically. So I'm just sort of letting myself, now I'm putting some lines in from where that skin ends and where the fur starts. And that's why towards the end of this video you'll see a bit more fur around the eye and a bit more, but it's in no way what it's going to look like on the finished drawing, as you can see if you watch the full video. This is just what I like to do, is the same as the eye. I like to get some defining lines in, some general lines. I like to know where my darks are going to be, where my highlights are going to be. So I'll put in the dark lines now for the fur in the direction that it's travelling, knowing that the top part of that fur is going to be a lot lighter. So I'll leave the gap for that. Excuse me. So yeah, that's basically how I draw a dog's eye. So I might leave it at that for now. And hopefully the music will sort of kick in at the end of this, and you can watch the last, or is it 12 minutes without me nattering on and banging on. But like I said, this isn't meant to be really a tutorial how to, so sorry if some of you are thinking, well, you didn't really tell me how to do it properly. I will be doing that in future on some more videos. I will be doing some proper tutorials. I didn't plan any of what I've said on this video. I had no plan at all what I was going to say. I've just basically, like I said, put the video on and winged it basically on just give a little narration over the top. I just wanted you to see a bit more of my process. So again, thanks to everybody who subscribes, thanks to everybody who watches my videos. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your support, I really do. And I'm hoping to do a lot more tutorial and how-to videos, and I'm hoping to start a Patreon as well. So it'd be really great if you could continue to support me. I love you all. I think your comments are lovely. I get some really great comments. I think I've only ever had 2 bad comments out of thousands and thousands, so it's really great. I feel really blessed in that way. I'm hoping to really knuckle down and do a lot more drawing. So I hope to see you all on my future videos, and sorry for rabbiting on so much, and I hope the music has worked on this video, or the background music anyway. So I'll see you all real soon. Ta-ra.